We're recording. Okay, good. Go.
Hi, hello. I'm Mary, and this is Frankie, and this is the Wheels Up podcast, where we do discourse on criminal minds and promise to have no actual information on the topic.
That was actually really good. That was really good.
Thank you.
So yeah, to take over from Mary, we don't promise any actual knowledge about anything outside the show. We barely know the show. To be fair, both of us have trouble remembering very basic plot points sometimes. But yeah, the point of this podcast is to just chat and kind of give the fans a bit of a platform when it comes to Criminal Minds. So yeah, like Mary said, I'm Frankie. I am taking a gap year right now from college, and this is kind of just something we both are doing to like keep in touch and keep ourselves busy. Mary, do you want to tell some stuff about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Mary. I am at college. This is my dorm, and I started college last week. So hopefully, this will help me de-stress while I am starting college classes and stuff.
Do you want to expose yourself as a STEM major?
What's wrong with being a STEM major?
I don't know why I'm
I'm
making.
actually an engineering major.
There we
So
go. There you
I'm
go.
in the engineering college.
Now everyone knows you've been exposed. I don't know why I'm making
Why
fun
are
of
you
you.
acting like it's a crime? Like I'm a liberal arts major.
I'm literally going to STEM next year. This is not funny. Anyways, okay. So I thought we would start the podcast with let me backtrack actually. So each podcast will be a different topic. I've seen other Criminal Minds podcasts, which is basically like an episode per episode. So they'll just talk about a single episode in the podcast. But ours is just going to be from topic to topic. And so our first topic, which I think is a very universally like agreed on topic, is the trauma of Dr. Spencer Reid. Which is there's like a mass amount of it. Like an unrealistic
It's too
amount of it.
much.
It's too much.
It's too much. He should be dead by stress at this point.
Dude, like
it's just not possible.
not even by stress, like the shit he has gone through. Oh, should we swear? I think we should swear. I think it's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
We'll just say it's PG-13.
Yeah. But yeah, no, like realistically, I made a list of Spencer Reid's trauma. I will show the camera. Took me a good couple of hours to put this all together. Physically, putting aside the emotional trauma, physically he should be dead. He's been shot like more than once, according to the list. Yeah, before I get started on the list, I would just like to say I got a lot of this information off of a Criminal Minds subreddit. So there. And I also got most of it from the Criminal Minds wiki. So shout out to those people who run that website. They are a blessing. But I thought we would just go through the list event by event, which I put in chronological order. It took me so long. Okay, so the first thing, which is already like such a hard hitter, season 2, episode 1, we find out that Spencer's mom has schizophrenia, which is such a great way to start the series. Season 2, this character has such a hard-hitting past. Mary, do you want to elaborate?
It's not even that his mom has schizophrenia. It's that he was like forced to grow up like basically on his own, and he had to take care of his mom because she had difficulty going on her medication, and his dad left, and he was just like an adult from like the age of 10.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely insane. And not only like the growing up too quick part, it's the constant fear that eventually his schizophrenia will develop because it's a genetic passed disease, which is,
and just the way he is and how much like importance he places on his mind and his intelligence and his job and in his personality and who he is, just like that specifically is like the most, that's the thing he's most afraid of. It's the worst thing that could happen, him like losing control of his mind, you know?
Oh yeah, and I think like I think he puts a lot of his self-value in how much he knows, which is why he's like endlessly like reading and like learning stuff. And also I think he thinks other people value him for his knowledge. I don't think he values like his actual like personality or who he is enough. Should we move on to the next thing? There's so much to talk about.
So much.
Season 2, episode 5, literally 4 episodes later, Elle leaves. Mary, do you want to talk about how you don't know much about Elle or Gideon because they're early season characters?
Okay. Whenever I rewatch the show, I just start when Emily joins the show. I just start watching from the episode when Emily arrives, and then I just watch after that because, like, why do I need to see Gideon? Like,
it's
the only thing I care about Gideon is that Reid cares about him.
Anyway, okay, a little background. Mary, like she just said, only starts when Emily enters, which is not for a couple of seasons. But you have
it's
seen
not that far. Isn't it like the end of season 2?
I think so. Something like that.
Yeah.
But you have seen Mary has seen the early seasons, but she's only watched them the one time.
Season 1 and season 2. I just watched it once.
Anyways, a little background information. I've seen seasons 1 through 12 4 times, and 13 through 15 only once. I feel like we should
have a little bit obsessed.
A little,
just a tad.
God. I think another episode of us should be like, it's just us talking about the dilemma of not having seasons 13 through 15 on Netflix, because that's such a weird thing that like Criminal Minds fans have to deal with,
especially now that it's over.
Oh yeah,
like you could understand having the most recent season not on there just because like the big movie companies want money or whatever, right? But like it's over.
Yeah, that's honestly so weird. And like I went through a whole like time of my life where I just didn't know what happened through seasons 13 and 15, and like the series was already over and I would just exist and being like
And then like season 12, I only actually watched seasons like 11 through 15 recently, but like season 12 ends on a huge cliffhanger.
Oh yeah.
Like you don't even know if some of the characters survived, and then they just like end it there.
That's so awful. Honestly, it's such a weird place to like just stop having the seasons. But yeah, should we back to Elle. Why that's traumatic. It's traumatic because it like triggers his abandonment, and he like blames himself a lot for her leaving because she was acting weird prior to her leaving, and he did notice it, but he didn't really say anything about it. So he blames himself largely.
Like PTSD or something?
Yeah, because one of the unsubs like was in her house and like drew like a message in her own blood on the wall from like I think a gunshot wound, either a gunshot or a stab wound, and she like measured PTSD and she ended up like shooting another unsub. Okay, the next thing. Oh, this one I feel like is forgotten about, but season 2 episode 11, we're still in season 2 by the way, all of the traumatic events have happened in one season. Nathan Harris, do you remember this?
No. Remind me.
He was the kid who like approached Spencer on the subway, like asking him kind of weird questions, and then he ended up like being kind of close to a case in which a person was killing prostitutes.
That was in season 2?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was later. That's the guy who the kid turns out to be like he has to go to like get like mental help, right?
Oh yeah.
Because like yeah.
So like because they end up profiling him as like a sociopath, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
With, like violent and sexual tendencies. But that one's just, it's not so much trauma, but it's more like Reid just seeing his own reflection in a really bad person, which happens multiple times throughout the whole series.
I remember he really saw himself in that kid, and the fact that he was struggling so hard with like his like murder tendencies. I don't know what you would call that. I don't know the technical term. It just really hit him hard, and the fact that he couldn't help him.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? Especially because he came to him specifically for help and he couldn't help him.
But we're gonna get more into just Reid. Reid really identifies a lot with the unsubs, which is such a heartbreaking thing that happens multiple times throughout the series. But we'll get back to that. later on. Next thing, this, before I even say this, literally the creme de la creme of trauma when it comes to Dr. Spencer Reid.
Oh.
Actually, maybe not the creme de la creme, but pretty close. This is where his like trauma really takes an up spike. Season 2, episode 15. Still season 2, by the way. Tobias Hankel.
Oh yeah. That was a bad one. I think wasn't that the first like bad traumatic moment that happened in the entire series?
I think so. I don't remember anything too.
Or did Morgan's thing happen before that?
No, I think that was like a revealed thing like later.
Mm.
But I mean, that's like there's so much in that.
What happens afterward. Like that was horrific, you know?
Yeah. Aside from like
Should we explain to the viewers who might not remember what happened?
We've just been going, oh my god.
It's just so bad. Okay, so Reid is taken captive by a man who has DID, right?
Yes.
And one of the man's alter identities is his abusive father. Right. And he's keeping Reid captive. And while the abusive father's identity is like torturing him, the true self, like the son of the person who has him captured, he drugs him in order to, he thinks he's helping him and to like keep him, to like protect him from his father in that way. And he's there for like hours, right? Is it a full day?
I don't think it's a full day, but it's definitely like a good couple of like hours at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember that like aside from getting drugged, aside from like getting Spencer addicted to Dilaudid, which just carries on for a good couple episodes, it doesn't carry on enough. Yeah. That's a big complaint within the Criminal Minds community.
They kind of forget about it after a season.
That's such an awful.
Maybe less than a season, maybe like a half season. They just kind of forget about it.
To be honest,
mean, they never fully like explain or confront it.
Yeah,
it's only on the side, which.
Yeah. To be honest, like I feel like if they had stopped here with his trauma, he would have been like a very rounded character. Like drug addiction in itself is a gigantic thing that like people deal with, and like I think it would have been like a pretty decent hefty plot line for Reid to struggle with a Dilaudid addiction.
It's not like they weren't able to like have an addicted character like with that arc, because they did it later with Strauss.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They literally only did that for Strauss, so we would feel bad.
Honestly.
Like if you rewatch the episodes where she's first introduced, she's just an asshole. And there's like really no redemption when it comes to her. It just seems like she just wants to get rid of like Hotch and just gets people fired.
It's really odd.
But yeah. Not too long after Tobias Hankel, which by the way also accompanied with PTSD of like there is a scene where like doesn't Reid have to choose who gets murdered based off like
oh yeah
so like again a reminder, Tobias Hankel, the ends up shows Reid different screens of people who he has like cameras set up in their house, and he's like, oh, pick one to die or like pick one to live. And so Reid ends up having to like choose someone in hopes of the team getting there in time, and they don't. The victim dies right in front of Reid on camera. So this next thing that doesn't happen too long after, literally season 3, episode 2, Gideon leaves.
And that was so hard for Reid, because that Gideon became like a father figure for him.
Absolutely.
He was like the person who understood him the best, and just like the way his mind works, and he got him into the FBI, and then he just leaves with just leaving a note and nothing else, which is like exactly what his father did when he was like, what, 8?
Yeah. Oh my God.
So that hit him so hard.
like literally the scene when Spencer's like where like they keep checking up on Spencer obviously because this is a very traumatic thing that's happened to him and Spencer's like,
Hmm.
"Oh yeah, I just think it's funny that Gideon left me a note like my father did when he left." And it's just like, Jesus Christ.
It really comes out of left field, and everyone's like, "Oh,
I
Reid."
you know what? I with this one though, I definitely will cut slack on the writers for doing this because I think it's more on the actor, just Mandy Patinkin, who plays Gideon. I heard that he just didn't want to do the show anymore, and so there was really
The
no way of
scene when
covering
he
this.
dies later is so funny
Oh, can you remind them why it's so funny?
because like a couple seasons after that, probably like season 8 or 9, I think it's pretty far forward.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
Gideon's character, he hasn't been on screen since he just left Read That Note, but he dies. And then,
Yeah,
like, the case they have to solve that episode is who killed him and what Gideon was doing. So he's like tracking down the serial killer, even though he left the FBI. And there's a scene where the team goes into the morgue to like investigate his body, and they pretend that he's covered with a sheet to like to be respectful, but it was actually because the actor just wouldn't come back to film
yeah.
that scene because he hated the show so much.
I just think it's funny because that's so obvious because if you watch every other like episode, they never leave the body covered like that.
Yeah,
They
they do
always
not stray
investigate
away
it.
from just like showing dead bodies.
But yeah, the whole Gideon thing again is just it's so fucked. It happened so early on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's ugh. Okay. The next thing, literally 10 episodes later, crisp. Um, I don't know if this is so much trauma. I think it counts. The trouble while the problem I had while compiling the list was that I didn't know what counted as trauma because the job in itself is such a painful job.
Yeah,
I
it's
obviously
really mentally draining.
the list would have been 10 times longer if I had included every time Reid was like held up at gunpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Or anything like that, which I think in general is a very traumatic thing, but for the
We
standard
just
where
don't have enough time
we don't
to
have
talk
enough
about
time.
everything.
Um, but so this thing is season 3, episode 12. Um, a teenage unsub gets murdered in front of Reid, and so this. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Is that the one with the people that are in Witsec in the bathroom?
Uh, where
Or
I
is that
don't.
later?
I think the people was Lindsay Vaughn in Witsec. I think that was a different plot line. I know what you're thinking of because they're very
No,
similar
but
plot
like
lines.
no, but the dad and the daughter, they were both in Witsec because he was in the mob.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm
I'm
stupid.
right? Okay.
Is there another episode where like different people are in Witsec as well? I feel like there is. I don't know why.
Well, Hotch's wife and child are in Witsec.
Okay, well obviously I would remember that.
I mean,
God,
I can't think of anything right now, but there probably is.
we need to do an episode on the downfall of Hotchner because that's such an like
Oh,
that's in
Hotch.
okay another episode, but yeah. So basically, it's a really big moment. It's different than other unsubs dying definitely because Spencer tries so hard to convince Lindsay's dad not to kill the guys who've taken
Mm-hmm.
her, um, but he still does it. And obviously, we know how that
And I
Lindsay
think it
thing.
hits so hard. It hits so hard because I think Reid thought he really got through to him.
Oh yeah,
And then like after that, the daughter Lindsay is like, "No, dad, kill him, please." And then she just kills him. Like he kills him, and then he's like, "I'll start not killing people tomorrow." He has a weird line where he's like, "I'll start not killing people tomorrow."
yeah. He's like, I'll start tomorrow, and then shoots the unsub. And obviously, we know how the whole Lindsay Vaughn thing works out towards the end.
Oh yeah.
We should have probably put like a spoiler alert that we're gonna talk about all 15 seasons when it comes to this series.
Honestly.
Um, okay. Oh my god. Okay. Season 3, episode 16, 4 episodes later. This is what is it? I don't even remember how to intro this. Oh, so this is a really big episode because Spencer really relates to the unsub who is his name is Owen Savage, I think. And he's like a kid who's like, I think, taking revenge against all his bullies and has taken his like girlfriend kind
Oh,
of
I
cabin with him.
remember that. I mean,
But
that's a really hard episode for the viewer too, I
oh yeah,
think. Just because a lot of his trauma is just so extreme that it's hard to relate in
oh
that
yeah,
way. But then that is just something that a lot of people experience and a lot of people like see in their childhood. And then just to have Reid, to have it hit him so hard, you know,
yeah.
it's hard for him and it's hard for the viewer. Is
It
what
absolutely. And like, to be more specific, trauma wise, Reid specifically points out an event that happened when I think he was like in middle school. Well, he was probably
Mhm.
middle school age, but in high school because he's big brain.
Yeah.
Um, the lack of sophistication when it comes to this podcast. Um, but yeah, he recounts when he was like literally stripped naked and tied to a football pole, while like a
Mhm.
lot of his just classmates just laughed at him, and he was like left there forever. Not forever. Imagine if he was left there forever. He wouldn't. He would have made
That's
it to the
all of his
series.
trauma. But I mean, if that was his only trauma, as opposed to the list.
If that was his only trauma, we'd be making an episode about like why is everyone else traumatized and Spencer Reid's not. He had one event. But that one is just like that's such a insane thing. They didn't have to go so hard on his like childhood thing.
Yeah.
Like I think the odds are that he was like bullied as a child, but I don't think the writers had to have it make like that extreme.
I mean, it's not only that his dad left.
Mm.
It's not only that, remember that thing that happened when he was a kid and he thought his mom killed someone or he thought his dad killed someone. It's not
Yeah.
only that. It's not only that his mom has schizophrenia, which isn't bad by itself. It's just how it affected him in his
Right.
childhood. And it's not only that he was bullied so deeply and he skipped grades and he was ostracized from his classmates. It's just like, did they have to do that much?
Yeah. Like he could
Why did
have
they have to hurt him so much?
God. Like I feel like they could have just been like he ate lunch by himself and no one talked to him. He didn't have friends, but no
Yeah.
one tied him to a football pole and left him there for overnight. Like that didn't have to happen.
And there's also a small thing, but he's really good friends with JJ,
Oh yeah.
you know, throughout the series. And I'm not going
Yeah.
to talk about the end things. I don't like it. But no, we're not talking about it right now. But he's like really close with JJ because they're kind of like the youngest people on the team and they're really close friends. But then he has that conversation with JJ about how like he was bullied when he was a kid and like JJ can't relate to him, you know?
Yeah.
Because she was like the popular cheerleader girl in high school.
Yeah.
Which is a small thing, but I think it's kind of part of it, you know?
No, that definitely plays into it where like it's a big thing I think for Spencer is that he's like I don't know. I feel like with friendships he's a tad insecure, and so I think like it's kind of scary to think at the end of the day he really can't completely relate to anyone on the team just because of
Yeah.
what he went through and how specific it was for him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
He does have that conversation with Morgan though.
that is true. That helps a little bit,
Yeah.
but nothing will ever fix all of it. Nothing.
No.
Unless
No.
they reshoot the entire series, nothing will be fixed. Okay.
Oh jeez.
Next thing, season 4, episode 3. Again, not in comparison to all his other trauma, not as traumatizing, but when Benjamin Cyrus holds him and Prentice hostage. Do you remember this?
No.
Okay, so to recap, I feel like I should be recapping for all of these, not just the ones you don't know, but it'll be fine. It's fine.
It's okay. I'll stand in for the audience.
Okay, thank you. But basically, it's a kind of a cult disguised as more of like a spiritual like church thing. I don't know how you would describe it, but
oh no, I remember now.
yeah. So Unsub is Benjamin Cyrus who takes in underage girls as his like wives and keeps them in this kind of like not sanctuary. I don't know what you call it, but like sanctuary and like it's real
it's
culty.
a church.
Yeah, basically.
It's a church being used as a cult.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the trauma with this is that, well, one, he's held hostage. That's a given. But also, Prentice takes a beating for Reid.
Yeah.
Which is a very Reid-specific trauma just because he blames himself for a lot already. And so putting this on top of it all, and like how close, not Morgan, Reid and Prentice get, it hurts a lot.
Yeah. I mean, also throughout that episode, I can't remember if it was 2 episodes or 1 episode. He is forced to, he talks to the leader of the cult a lot, and he's forced to relate to him in order to try to convince him to do his best to save the people in the cult. Like, I think it's Reid that convinces the cult leader to let the women and children go.
Yeah, I think so.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's like, it's just the fact that he's forced to think into the mind of that killer and like be put under that stress that like he is kind of directly responsible for trying to save these people, all these people that this guy is basically like, they know the end point is he's going to try to kill them because this is how cults like this work out. And he's trying to save Prentice, and he's trying to save these people while trying to relate to a very sadistic man. It's just,
it's not a fun time. But yeah. So the next thing, this is kind of a backtrack. It's revealed in season 4, episode 7, that Spencer's dad left him at like a young age, which is I don't this one I like pains me so much. I don't know why, but it just seems like a very unnecessary thing. I don't know why, but I feel like just his mother having schizophrenia, again, in itself not a bad thing, but the way it played out was awful. I feel like Reid having to just have his mother was kind of unnecessary. I don't know why I think it's unnecessary, but it feels a bit unnecessary.
It does, because like once you know his dad left, you realize he was by himself, basically taking care of his mom for his entire childhood and into his adulthood.
Yeah.
So he's never been able to rely on anyone else, which I think kind of explains a little bit about his character.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm conflicted on whether I'm okay with this as opposed to having his dad as like an unknown / astringent character where like he exists but we don't ever talk about him. I don't know which is like the lesser of two evils.
The way his dad left was weird too. Wasn't that the episode where he thought his dad was a murderer?
Yeah, same episode.
Yeah, so during that episode, Reid, like, he remembers something from his childhood where his dad was like burning bloody clothes in his backyard. But then throughout the episode, you realize that there was a pedophile in Reid's neighborhood growing up, and his mother went with one of their neighbors, and then the neighbor ended up killing the pedophile because he hurt his son.
Yeah.
And then Reid's dad, to protect the mom, burns her clothes in the backyard. And then it's like, how did they explain him leaving too? They were just like, he couldn't deal with the fact that the mom wasn't on her medication. And so he just left and then didn't try to contact Reid again. It was just really
like
off with his dad, and his dad is like, I still love you, and I like read all the newspaper articles that you're featured in, but like he never tries to contact him, and it's just weird to me.
No, it's pretty bold because I don't know. It's like I looking back on like how they show his father leaving. It's like his dad just being frustrated with with Reid's mom that she's not taking his meds. But at the same time, he's leaving behind like I feel like a 10-year-old, probably like a 12-year-old boy with his mother who isn't completely able to take care of him like at all.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the logical progression wouldn't be, oh, my wife isn't able to mentally care for herself, so I'm gonna leave. Like that's not it. It should be like, my wife isn't able to mentally care for herself, so I need to take care of my son. Like,
yeah. And I think that's why the trauma feels so forced and almost unnecessary. It's because it logically doesn't make any sense, and it also doesn't make sense that his father never like talked to him since then. Like that was the last day they talked to each other.
it seemed like the writers really wanted another thing to happen in Reid's childhood so they could mention it in the episode, and they had already said that thing, like that throwaway comment that Reid made about his father leaving him when Gideon left.
Mm-hmm.
So they were just trying to like put a story together based on that.
Yeah.
And they didn't like start from the beginning, you know?
Is it bad that we're like not even halfway through the list? And I'm afraid
We might have to make a part 2.
like this is I'm so like I'm good to
Why
still
don't
keep
we
recording. Sorry, I'm good
let's
to
get halfway and
yeah.
then
We'll see, because there, I don't know. I was looking at this, and the rate at which the trauma happens does slow down, but the trauma just gets worse.
oh yeah.
But yeah, I'm good to keep recording, but I'm already like emotionally exhausted because I'm like it's.
I mean, it has been a half an hour, so
Mm.
we could just do another half hour, and then it could be an hour, and then
Okay. Just because I know so many people are gonna watch this, it's important.
Oh yeah, definitely.
To have
For
content.
fans.
Oh God. Okay. The next thing was it was Reid having to reunite with his father because he thinks he might be an unsub. It feels so forced at this point though, because it's just it's not only that his father left, they never spoke, and he might be a killer, which unnecessary. But the next thing, season 4, episode 24. We're literally only on season 4. We're not even a third away through the series. This is so bad.
Geez.
He gets I don't think it's anthrax specifically, but he gets pretty much anthrax.
Doesn't he? I thought he had anthrax, but did he actually have anthrax?
I think they use like anthrax as kind of like an analogy for what's happening throughout the episode, but I don't think it's like actual anthrax. But he did get like poisoned by a chemical and like
Are you talking about the episode where the unsub was like using the like putting anthrax everywhere and people were getting sick?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I remember he quarantines himself because he's convinced that he has anthrax and he's going to die. But he keeps working on like finding the solution. But I can't remember if he like actually got sick or not.
I don't know either. It gets bad enough to the point where right after they get him out, they take him to the hospital and he like starts like pretty much having a stroke in the ambulance. But the part for me that makes this so like traumatizing, one, it's the physical toll, like having to recover from this event. And also there is a part in the episode where he thinks he might die. And so he records a message to his mom. We're not, it's so like I feel like they could have thrown any other character into the situation, but they had to do it to Reid. I feel like they do this on purpose because they know he's one of the most loved characters.
They really do.
I feel like as soon as their viewership goes down, they're like, "Oh, let's put Reid in something," so they have to find out.
Let's just hurt Reid again, so people will watch it.
Honestly, like I'm surprised that Matthew Greg Googler didn't step up and say, "Hey, I think I'm gonna leave this series because this is so emotionally exhausting to do like every season."
Jeez.
But yeah, the next thing is less trauma and more of a like a funny thing. But in the first episode of season 5, he gets shot in the knee.
Wasn't that because he actually broke his leg and they needed a reason for him to be wearing a cast?
Yes. I love the way like outside happenings just like affect the show. Like I feel like I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like most shows are more like better equipped to deal with stuff like this happening. But I love that they're like, "Oh, he's on a crutch. Let's just shoot his character. Let's do it."
I mean, it's not like it's unrealistic.
That's true. But I don't know. I feel like there's something else that could have been done. I just thought that one was funny.
I'm surprised they weren't like his father came back and it turns out he was actually an unsub and he shot him in the knee. You could have just gone like full 100%.
I'm surprised they didn't like have a whole storyline where like all of a sudden his knee acts up because there's like he has cancer or something. Honestly,
the anthrax comes back and it's in his knee.
Oh my god. I'm literally surprised they didn't make this like a whole like trauma thing. Like, oh, Yeah, my knees
No,
acting.
but they would like give Reid cancer, and then he like goes into chemo, and then like 3 episodes later, they never talk about it again.
Yeah, they're like, I'm fine. All my hair grew
He's
back
just like
and I'm fine.
he's bald for 1 episode, and then they never bring it up again.
Oh my
Can
god.
you imagine if they did that? I wouldn't put it
Honestly?
past them. That would be so bad.
Oh my god. But honestly, I'm surprised they weren't like, oh, my knee's acting up again because I had like a childhood accident because a bully like hit me in the knee with a bat and
They
you know.
threw me in the river. I had to struggle for my life.
Honestly, like, oh my god. But yeah, that I just thought that was like an interesting thing. And it's such a like a little thing, but it really goes to show how high the standard is when it comes to Reid trauma. I don't know if I want to mention the next thing. We can just talk about it for like 2 seconds. Season 6, episode 12. He gets headaches.
Yeah.
Which
That was weird though.
it was weird because they
There's
brought
a
it up.
couple episodes over the course of the series where they like imply supernatural happenings. It's just odd.
It
only happens a couple times.
And yeah, the one thing that bothers me is that I think it's supposed to be like a nod to him being scared of possibly developing schizophrenia.
Yeah.
But they don't really touch on that beyond this one episode. It's like the next episode, everything's fine. Which it really bothers me. But yeah. The next thing.
What?
I put it on here because I think it's hilarious. And honestly, just another thing they had to do to Reid to give him some more pain. Season 6, episode 2, we find out he's lactose intolerant.
The worst trauma he had over the course of the series.
Dude, honestly though, it's kind of like they didn't have to do him like that. They didn't have to add on to the fact that he is.
They really didn't.
It's do you remember how we find this out? I don't think you probably don't because it's such a little thing.
No, I don't think I do.
It's like an opening to one of the episodes, and they're like at their desk, and like Reid's eating yogurt, I think, or something like that, and then what's her name? Prentice is like, not again with the dairy, and he's like, I can't help it, I love dairy. They like, and then I read somewhere online. I didn't rewatch the episode for this. I should have. But like 2 scenes later, they show him like coming out of the plain bathroom, and he looks like he's just vomited from the dairy. It's hilarious.
So what you're saying is that he can't even have ice cream after Maeve died.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And you know what?
It just makes everything worse.
I love that they
sprinkles on the top of the trauma cupcake.
I love that they did this because this one funny thing has more like is kind of almost more well written and subtle than a lot of Reid's trauma.
It's more well written than his entire father backstory.
That's true. Honestly, I'm surprised. Again, they should have extended the whole lactose intolerant thing. No, it's not even. Imagine if he's like not even lactose intolerant. He just like had an accident with a cow one time in his childhood, and he can't have dairy because it gives him PTSD.
It's psychosomatic. Every time he has dairy, he throws up.
Oh, no.
After the bully threw him in the river, he got kicked by a cow and he tried to crawl back in.
Honestly. Oh my god.
Okay, what's the next one?
We're getting back to the creme de la creme of trauma here. Not that lactose intolerance isn't trauma. It is. I sympathize with anyone who has lactose intolerance.
Because dairy beat the creme de la creme.
Oh, hey! I wish I had like downloaded a siren sound so that I could just hit every time that happens. No, this is a serious thing. Season 6, episode 18. Emily dies.
Oh,
dies.
That was one of the. That thing leads to like one of the most hard-hitting scenes in the entire show, I think. But we can talk about that after we talk about the original thing.
Yes. So I hate it. This makes me angry because Emily dies. She dies. Which, let's just say Emily dies. Spencer's gonna blame himself so much for her death.
Mm-hmm.
And they were so close. And
they really were.
What makes me more mad is that, like, we're gonna get more into this later, but JJ and Hotch knew that Emily wasn't dead.
They helped her fake her death.
It's and I hate how long they keep it from the team.
They keep it from the team until they're forced to give it up.
Yes.
Like, and they don't tell the team until Emily walks back into the door.
It's not right.
It's not like they don't know how to keep secrets. They're federal agents.
Okay. Oh. I think how long have we been recording?
Like 45 minutes?
45 minutes. Okay. I think we'll talk about the next thing and then talk about the next thing. Yeah, we'll talk about the next we'll talk about the next thing, and then we'll stop it there because that's when things really take an upswing.
Can I talk about one of the most hard-hitting scenes in the series, in my opinion, because of Prentice's death?
Yes.
Okay, so when Prentice comes back,
right,
Reid is mad at Prentice, but he's also mad at JJ because JJ kept it from him. And then they have this scene where Reid confronts him and he tells JJ, I came and cried in your living room every day for months and you didn't tell me. And then that just, like, it tells you so much, and it tells you how much that affected him and how long he was heartbroken about this, and his closest friend couldn't tell him that his other friend wasn't dead. And
which is why
I almost cry every time I watch that.
I'm anti JJ. We'll have a debate on JJ in another episode because Mary doesn't. I mean, I don't.
She's not the best character, but I don't dislike her.
I don't like her. I dislike her.
I think the writers kind of did her a disservice because they didn't flesh out her character enough. But I don't think she's a bad character.
But you know who else the writers did a disservice to?
Elle?
The entirety of the Corona Minds fan community. So much disservice.
That's a different
We'll get into that in another episode. But yeah, by the way, she returns season 7, episode 2, which isn't like an entire season later, but it is a good amount of time later. And it's awful, and I hate every second of it. And it's they really did Reid dirty. Like, they could have. I know they're not supposed to tell, but at the same time, it's just an unnecessary traumatic thing that Reid needs to go through again.
They already do so many, like, against regulation things in the team. Like, the fact that it was against regulations isn't a good enough excuse, in my opinion.
It's a disappointment. It's truly, it's just one of those things. The next thing, fuck. Trauma follows trauma. Season 8, episode 12. We bring in Maeve.
Oh no! That's my worst. It's the worst thing that happens in the series.
Honestly, I will say that this is probably the worst of Spencer Reid's trauma.
I actually, when I rewatched the series, I had to skip the Maeve episode because I knew I would cry and just be mentally unready, and I had to do something that day.
It just... The whole thing feels so undeserved because, first of all, they kind of play out their relationship for a good couple of episodes. It's not, she doesn't appear and die in the same episode. So we feel like a sort of development, and I feel like that would have been so beautiful for them to end up together and for her to live out through the series. It just felt so not worth it.
You could tell that they like worked well together as a couple. And then, like, I think they only build it up for like 5 episodes max.
Oh yeah.
I think. Yeah. And so you can tell they only introduced her to kill her.
it's so frustrating because it's not like she's not like the other people that they've introduced to for the as love interest for the team, because she's actually a really interesting character. She's a pretty decent
Yeah.
character. The way they write her and her backstory of her like her ex and her stalker, it's like a really
Mhm.
solid backstory that would make a really like would make a really good long lasting character throughout the rest of the
Yeah.
series.
She would have been an interesting character to like bring back a couple
Oh,
times a season.
absolutely. Um, and we're not even gonna get to who Spencer kind of actually ends up with, because that's a whole nother frustrating plot line that we'll
I don't
probably
want to talk
flesh
about that
out.
right now.
That we'll probably flesh out towards the end. Um, uh,
You know
and
what I think?
what?
I think they couldn't, the writers and the producers didn't want to give Reid a love interest because they knew it would make the younger female and or younger people that liked men fan base less likely to watch the show because they thought that they wouldn't want to watch it if Reid wasn't single.
Can we add that to the list of like cowardice for the producers and writers of
Yes.
Criminal Minds?
Or cowards.
This is the start of a long running joke that's going to happen between Mary and I, where we just call the producers and the writers of Criminal Minds cowards. You're cowards.
If it was still going on, I would pick it outside their office.
Why not? Just pick it
Just
outside of
now.
CBS right now.
No, let's find the writers' actual, maybe not the writers. I feel like the writers weren't cowards so much as the producers.
Yeah.
Let's find the producer's address and we go directly to their house.
Yeah. We don't advocate that. I feel like before we post this video, a disclaimer, we don't actually advocate anyone going to the houses of the producers
It's a joke.
or writers
It's
of
a
Criminal
joke.
Minds.
It's a joke.
It's a joke. For the sake of for legal reasons, it's a joke.
Yes.
I hate to ask this again, but how long have we been recording for?
50 minutes. I think we started at 3:30.
Okay, so we'll just talk about this next one really quick, and then we'll flesh out the one after that because that's a big one, and then we'll probably end it.
Okay.
Are we done talking about Maeve, or shall we?
I don't think we ever even told the audience what happened about Maeve, but if they've gotten that far in the series, they definitely know.
If the audience has stuck with us within this podcast till now, they probably know what happened to Maeve.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say they know, or they can Google it. It's
Google it. Don't even watch this podcast. Just read a Wikipedia page of what happens in Criminal Minds.
Watch the show.
Honestly.
Just leave. Go to Netflix right now.
Okay, the next thing, season 9, episode 23. This one gets me so mad because it's such an unnecessary trauma. He gets shot in the neck.
Oh, jeez.
To saving Blake.
I remember that.
Which is, we're not even going to explain. It's unnecessary, unmemorable. It didn't need to happen.
That's the episode was that the episode when all the cops were like running drugs or whatever?
I think so.
Yeah, and then Garcia has to like take him out of the hospital because the cops enter the hospital and try to kill him again.
Or is that
a different episode?
I think that's a different episode.
Is it a different episode? Okay, never mind. It's other trauma.
Well, other trauma that we'll get into the next episode next week. But I get that. I feel like these things happen so we can prove that, so that they can prove certain characters are like really good people. But we know that for Reid. We know that he's good to a fault.
You don't need to.
He doesn't need to get shot in the neck, and then we don't need to be like, oh my god, he's gonna die. We've been there too many times already to even worry about it happening. We know Reid's invincible at this point.
We knew he was gonna survive. Because if he left the show, then so many people would just stop watching. You know, I would keep watching because Prentice was still there.
That's true.
But if Prentice and Reid left the show, I can't say 100%. I'd just watch the show after that.
This is probably not going to happen, but like if by some magical miracle we end up like talking to Matthew Gray Gubler because of this podcast,
Why would you say that? We are not going to interview the original cast of the show.
You have to manifest this. I am putting this out there right now. This is going in the podcast. I am manifesting that this podcast will be successful and that we will eventually get to interview the original cast of Criminal Minds. I'm putting it out.
You know, why stop there? Just manifest that we're going to interview Harry Styles, even though he has no relation to the podcast whatsoever.
You know that's different. You know that's different. You know this is a different situation. You cannot.
It's just as believable.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Anyways.
You know what? Maybe we'll get to interview Kate.
Oh yeah, I'll tweet at her. I'll tweet at.
What if we interview Gideon and nobody else?
I will tweet at Mandy Patinkin. Get on our show. We want an interview.
Maybe we should do at least 3 episodes first.
You know what? We're just the next episode interviewing Mandy Patinkin, who played Gideon. You know
what? Why did you hate the show? Tell us.
You know what though? I feel like a lot of the people who played the unsubs or people who were extras in the show, I feel like if we really tried our hardest, we could actually kind of get them on the show. If you were like, do you want to do a 15-minute interview on what it was like to be on Criminal Minds? I mean,
we need a bigger viewer base for that. Right now, viewer base is 0.
We'll send this to Priya.
Okay, it's 1.
She'll watch for 5 minutes and then turn it off.
She's never watched a single episode of the show.
It's fine. Oh, Sinead.
Yeah, we'll send it to Sinead.
I'll send it to Sinead. I asked Sinead already, and I was like, do you want to be an interviewee eventually on our podcast? And she's like, yeah. Because I feel like, has Sinead even finished? She's finished the series, right?
She finished season 12.
Great. We'll have another clueless person.
Just watch her about most of it. You can ask her about most of it.
God. Okay. The last thing, and then we'll have to click off. Season 10, episode 13. Gideon gets murdered. Speaking of Mandy Patinkin.
Oh yeah.
Leaving. Gideon
dead. I felt nothing. Only thing that bothered me was that Reid was upset.
I feel like there was no need for a follow-up on what happened to Gideon.
Yeah, it really wasn't necessary.
Especially since they couldn't get the actor back on the show.
Yeah. I bet they planned the episode and then they couldn't get the actor back and they're like, fuck it, let's just do it anyway.
Let's just cover a mannequin.
What if they asked him first and then he said no and then they wrote the episode? That would be so funny. What if they didn't ask him at all? They were like, they knew he wouldn't come back, so they didn't even try to ask him.
He just for fun looks up what's going on with the show. He's getting a bunch of tweets from people. He's like,
oh, I'm dead.
They managed to film an episode centered around his character, and he just didn't get paid for any of it.
Oh jeez. Okay.
That's that would be if I don't want to compare it to that. I can't. Let's not get into that actually.
You know, I found that episode interesting just because we got all those flashbacks with Gideon and Rossi in the very beginning when they were first forming the BAU.
Right. But I feel like we needed more of that when Gideon was still on the show, because then the vibe that I get from a lot of people is that they don't care about Gideon as a character because we didn't get enough background on him.
I mean, but did Rossi exist before Gideon left?
That's true.
I don't think he did. I think Gideon left and then they invented Rossi to have someone fill that older mentory role on the team.
Our Italian papa.
But with spaghetti. I still think we should get Rossi's actor on the podcast and just to tell us how to make his pasta.
I think that's really embarrassing. I think if we manage to get Joe Mantegna, something like that, on the podcast, and we made him just cook on Zoom, Instead of asking him.
I bet he doesn't even, it's his character's recipe. It's not his recipe. I bet he didn't even like make it. It was just raw food.
He doesn't even cook. He's like, I don't know how to cook. Is the actor even Italian?
I don't know. Let me Google it.
What if the actor's not even Italian? That hits. If the actor's not Italian, that's sad.
What's his name? Joe Mantegna?
Yeah. Fun fact, Lindsey Vonn is played by his daughter, his real life daughter. If to anyone who didn't know that. I didn't know that. I found out like a month ago.
He is Italian.
Well, there we go.
He was born in Chicago.
At least
so he could have been a mob.
Yeah. At least one thing makes sense when it comes to Criminal Minds. But yeah, I think
he actually was in the mob.
What?
What if he was in the mob?
I wouldn't be surprised. Honestly. But yeah, so I think that is where we're gonna cap it on Spencer Reid's trauma. We will continue part one. Sorry, for gonna say. For today, we'll cap it. Next week, part two, we're gonna discuss all the lovely trauma that you guys are aching to talk about, including the whole Lindsey Vonn and Cat Adams. We didn't even get to Cat Adams today. That's a whole nother can of worms that we have to open.
Oh God.
Also, Reid getting sent to jail. Woo!
For those of you who haven't gotten past season 12, that's a thing.
That's it. It's before we end this, literally I think the longest time Reid doesn't really go through anything, it's because he's in jail.
But that's a thing in itself.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I've never made a YouTube video. Can I do the thing?
What thing?
All right, all of you 0 viewers out there, like and smash that subscribe button.
Oh no.
Comment what you think the worst trauma Reid has faced is. Let's get a discourse going.
Yeah, I can't say anything after that. I think we'll just end the recording. Okay. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Wheels Up. We literally said the name of this podcast once and then never said it again.
It's okay.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Wheels Up. Thank you for watching / listening. Bye.
Okay. Bye.